In this chapter, we will be talking about the business side of things. Usually, we don't discuss this thing in such tutorial or course, but I would call this a case study more than a course or a tutorial. And this initiative came from the VFXTREME or the VFX and CG pricing community. There are a lot of information to share in that side, and we have a lot of requests recently to do something or to present something concern this matter. Actually, we received this request from people who have been established in the community since more than 15 and 20 years, as well as from freelancers and starters and new people in the business who can't really deal with the business side of things because they are mostly coming from art or technical background, and a lot of times they don't know how to allocate the job, how to price the job, how to break down the things, including the bidding and the cost, and that will cost them mostly the job, how to get it and how to send the right documents to client, the chain of things, how things are happening at the client side, how to deal with the agency, what is the difference between dealing with the agency or directly with the client or with vendor. Sometimes it's extremely important to understand these things. You are an artist sometimes, or a technical, or someone who have no business to do with the production side of things. I would say this side is covered mostly by producers and business people like marketing, but producers are the people who are dealing with the client or the agency, delivering and making sure that everything is happening right externally. And internally, project managers and coordinators will make sure that this is happening inside the post house or VFX house or even the boutique. Now we have diagram which can show how things can happen in general. So let me just hide this, and here we can see that the job usually comes from client directly, and also it can come from agency, and this is mostly the way, as example, my post house is dealing with. So we don't deal directly with the client in most of the cases, except if the client knows what he wants and he has the right documents, or he previously did this work with other post houses or VFX houses. We deal with the agency because the agency knows exactly the right kind of pipeline between the production or the post-production or the freelancers or even the VFX boutique or company and the client. They will ease everything. They will form some kind of buffer, and they will know exactly what kind of documents or procedure or even money-wise how to deal with the client. This will protect you from being totally dealing with someone who is most of the time is ignorant of what you are doing, to a certain degree, of course, or when it comes to pricing and sending money and receiving money, that this procedure with the agency is secured more, and most of the cases is that there are some specialized people who know what to do and who are responsible about delivering the right kind of format and branded product to a client. The client cares about how his product will look and artistically how he will deliver this message in terms of marketing to his clients or his customers. The agency will do this study for him. The marketing department will make sure that they have the right studies and how they need to produce the client's products to the community or to his customers, and they will come up with an idea or a spot TV commercial or whatever, a campaign, and they will pass all this information to the client to get approvals. Then after that they will start the process by searching for vendors if they don't already have a production or post-production house or even a design department. So this is the way things happening. Sometimes they deal with one party which is responsible about going out and finding some people who can provide this, and this is like the outsourcing work. And most of the cases you will deal directly with the agency. The people who provide the service, they can be post house, post production house, freelancer, or VFX boutique or company. Sometimes you have to do one of the missions and pass it to the other people here, or to deal directly with the vendor who will coordinate between you and other party. So as example, if you have a commercial which needs live shooting, they will go to a production house, they will get everything done, then they will send you the material to do the post-production or the VFX. Sometimes you will do the art direction or do certain service, the dealing directly with the agency, and they will make sure everything is done and gathered there at their end. But other times you will deal with other part, which is also a service provider, like a production house or post-production house, or sometimes freelancers. This line is very established too, and a lot of cases is that the production house will do the shooting and he will search for someone to do the post-production or the VFX, or both, and they will deliver finally. So everything is happening here in the lower level. And during that, there should be certain kind of format or pipeline which you will make sure that you are providing the right information, the right kind of presentation to get the job, to price the job, and to keep a good relationship between you and between the other parties in this pipeline. So in our example here, we didn't put the whole spot. It's a TV spot, and we didn't put a whole TV spot. We put just one shot, and we just added the motion graphic at the end. We needed to change few things because of the client VFX company relationship and copyright. We just shared something which everyone knows, which is the logo and everything is copyrighted. But we other than that, all the information here is modified for educational purposes and for this course, specifically for this course, because we wanted to provide actual information as much as we can, but to keep things private as well. So what you will usually receive as a VFX house or as a VFX artist or CG artist is a storyboard usually, and they will send you some information, including information about the project itself, such as what is this spot, what is the period of this spot, what do they want from it, what is the message, what the requirements. If there is voiceover, you will receive some information about that. Maybe sometimes you will handle that thing, but most of the time you'll handle one mission or two missions. And for what we are handling here is just VFX. In other department in our company, another department will be handling the motion graphic and the titling. Of course, the music will be handled by other department, and as well as the voiceover. So all these things should be handled at one end or multiple ends. Sometimes the agency will be dealing with multiple parties to make sure that they complete the job and they send it as the client wants. But I will go to the main things and discuss the things which is related to the art of things and how you can deal and send some files, as well as how to price the thing, as mentioned before. So let's do it. The first thing you will receive from your client is a description about the project, and maybe they will send a storyboard directly. If not, you will request a storyboard. It's much preferred to work with something which has a storyboard rather than to work with something which is very like words and sentences. This is what we want, this is what we expect, and things like that. This doesn't work. It's not a script you can convert into visuals. at your end if you don't have art department or creative department. This is usually a mission which is happening at the agency side or sometimes at the client side. So at least you will need to receive a full creative brief. The creative brief includes some references, some mood board, the colors, the brand guideline, information about the product, what is the message, what is the approach, what they want, what they are expecting to receive, as well as the storyboard where you will know exactly the timing, the events, and how things should happen. In this storyboard, it's clear that we have a stage, which is just here a water as described, and basically three bottles which have different names or different titles. Diet and other one is a different thing. They will hit the ground and they cause splash, but the splash will include some ice which gonna come from underground suddenly and then will settle. But this is one shot. I didn't include all the shots. There are closed shots and there are other shots which we didn't include because we will concentrate on pricing or quoting or even studying one shot, then we'll generalize the thing. And after that we'll have the motion graphic, which is not a part of what we will do now, but just we mentioned how things can happen in general. So the first thing you will request is you will ask the client to provide more information. Sometimes it's not enough just to receive the storyboard. You need more information about the thing. Sometimes it's a discussion between you and the client, and that's always useful in the presence of the agency. And sometimes you have to deal only with the agency, and that will make the modifications sometimes difficult. Why? Because you have to convince the agency, then the agency have to convince the client, and sometimes, most of the times, there's a problem between the client and the agency. They didn't or they don't really get what he wants, and you will have to modify that for the agency again. So this is like a feedback you should expect from the agency, and this pipeline can be long if you don't really determine or specify exactly what is requested from your end. So in addition to whatever you receive from the agency, you have to send them a questionnaire, which is just a document like this, and we call it a questionnaire or clarification. And in it you will mention some questions. Here are some very small amount of questions. The list is very long actually, but we include some questions which you have to receive from the agency as the client also, such as you are talking about bubbles inside the bottles. Do you have any reference for that? He will send you some images and he will indicate this is this image and this image or this image. Also, how big the ice cubes as example, he will tell you, because you will make them, you will finish, you will send him a preview, he will come back with the feedback. So why not defining or determining this information before you do things? The camera movement, what do you expect the camera to be? If there is something, because it's not clear in the storyboard, the sliding drops, do you want some sliding drops on the button? Sometimes they don't. Or they just say enough, whatever gonna be produced from the splash is enough. In our case, no, they need more actually. They need something which is like really a lot of drops, and some of them are sliding, which is, it's impossible to be created by the splash, because when the bottles hit the ground, the splash gonna be going far away from them. Some of the drops will come here, but not as enough as the client is expecting. So the background colors, other colors, or what is the staging, how everything should be. Is there any shot before this shot? This is information for us in the pipeline. We know that we have other shots in the sequence, so we need to take in consideration the camera movement for each. Sometimes we work between two departments or more, and every team will take care of one shot. So we will need to know exactly how everything is happening, and this usually happens with the pre-visualization stage, but just this is internal information. What is the previous shot? It's close up on the bottle, and we have specific one, we can mention it. So next shot is ending motion graphic, And for the compositing, yes, we have to handle the compositing. It's not externally handled. For the length of this shot, which is the color splash, is 75 frames. The frame per second is 25 frame per second, which is PAL for the TV. The delivery resolution is HD. The delivery format is QuickTime ProRes. But this will happen in another department anyway. What we will be producing is EXR, and we will do the compositing. So other things like special notes from the client or the agency after a discussion, we will put whatever here. Sometimes it's we need to feel that there is a sense of scale, and this is for the water, how the water is moving. Anyway, we will have information now, and this information will be documented. That's preferred, so we send this to the client if possible, or the agency directly, and they will come up with some answers. So in any stage you need to go back to them and discuss this thing, you will have something to relay on. That's very important. In addition to the storyboard, your comments on the storyboard, and if there is a chance to do pre-visualization, that would be perfect, because then you have the timing, you have other details which usually is ignored in any discussion, and you basically did most of the work. If you have the pre-visualization, all you need to do is to enhance the quality in the pre-visualization, finish up the animation and the simulation, as well as the rendering, rather than just depending on the storyboard. The timing is important, and during the work you will send to the client some of the frames to tell the client that this is what I have, is this what you want, and you will share with him some frames. Maybe there is a problem here, you will mention that there's a problem, I need this to be fixed, this is not the way I want this to happen. All these things can happen in early stages or during the production. So during that you don't have to produce the whole sequence, but sometimes you have to deal or send certain frames to get some feedback. Now let's jump to the documents and how we can price or send things between us and between the client. After you define the shots and define the amount of work needed for everything, you can do what we call internal discussion about the pricing and the cost, and that include exactly how much you expect to spend on this project in terms of employees, time to work, and research and development. Also, you have to consider things like, okay, this is a first project from this client or this agency, maybe I have to do a discount. Of course, all these discussions are taken into consideration, but also sometimes you do one project which you know that you will use the assets you will create here in the phase of R&D for other projects. That also should be taken in consideration, because if you will just code for every project like it's the first and last project you will deal with the client, that maybe will be difficult for you to allocate other jobs or similar jobs from the same client. So I would say the first thing is to consider both all these considerations and start do internal discussion. Then you will have a number or numbers, and usually every post house or provider, they have a rate card. We call it a rate card, and usually it's just the missions or the tasks and the pricing for it. As example, compositing, sometimes it's like $1,000 a day. They will quote it per day, and sometimes it's not per day but it's per second. So I have a commercial and we charge per second like $1,000 or something like that, and that's just based on each house or each provider's preferences. Everyone has his formula or how he can deal and price things, but in general there is something which is common, and the clients or agencies, they expect to hear and listen to that thing, as well as to get it in a very right format, which is important. And what I mean about format, sometimes you need to send something like titled in a certain way, and maybe a breakdown separately, and maybe you will send a document like the questionnaire we send. And in bigger jobs you have to bring or produce something like a big breakdown or bidding. We call it bidding for like feature film or amount of work which is not easy to handle with just simple breakdown. For what we will do here, because we want you to understand the process even in different kind of jobs, we want to present something more complicated than the usual way. Even we are talking about one shot, but we want to give example how similar shots can be handled if you have like 300 or 400 shots. This is something we do daily, and if we don't have the right procedure or the pipeline, it's like the bottleneck. You will have the know-how, you know exactly how to do the things, but you can't handle the quantity. This is extremely important for agencies and clients and big companies, because they will realize that they can't rely on you on certain productions. And a lot of cases, people who have less quality work than you, or people who can't handle the kind of work you can handle, they will win the contract because they know that procedure and how to present what they do. So in our group, pricing and CGI groups in Facebook, we shared some documents about examples how we do quoting for films and basically bidding for films with breakdown and some quotations. Some of these examples I mentioned here as example. We share some few numbers which gonna show, or which shows how to price everything based on man day, and sometimes the prices are different from a country to a country. I would say every location has its prices, but there is average prices between places, and we can handle these differences by just a little study. So it's always advisable to go and discover what are the prices in other areas and where is the clients coming from. This is important because the client coming from, as example, from England is different from a client coming from Canada, different from a client coming from China or Dubai. You have to know exactly what kind of agencies or what kind of prices they are expecting. Of course, you need to account for the cost you have and how you can deal with this thing, but if you don't expect right and know more information about your client, you don't know how to deal with him. Of course, if you are just dealing with local clients, that's another story. It's even simple more, and it's just one time you'll know exactly what kind of prices for each agency or each client. So this is, as example, a bidding for a film. This is a breakdown, and we call it asset breakdown, where again in each project you have two phases, two main phases. One of them is to create the assets, because there are few things which you don't need to create every time or all the way. You just create these assets at the beginning of the project, and you will use them during the project to animate or to do whatever you want. So dividing or splitting these two sections into two missions, that will ease the pricing. So as example here we have things like, as example, if I will go here, like a grass, we have fence, we have swords, we have things for a movie. All these things are modeling basically and texturing. You will do it once and you create these and you will code for these at the beginning, but you don't code for them for every second. The other kind of work, which is a work which requires more simulation, rendering, effects, or animation, which is basically depending more on the seconds or the ongoing work. That's another thing which you have to code for. So we have the assets breakdown, and also we have what we call a shot breakdown. And in the shot breakdown you have two things. First one is the shot category, or what we call a development phase, and in this one you will typically price each shot based on the missions. So this is like pre-calculated numbers, and based on how easy or difficult each mission, you can have some certain pricing which you can initiate, or just to speed up your pricing process. If you have like 500 or 600 shots, you will just go there. Okay, I see this shot is hard, and it includes, it's just CG and composition, and I think this is like the category of this shot. So here, assuming rendering and compositing complex 3D scene, which may include shape, deformation, simulation. This is the description for the shot, and based on that, it will require a certain amount of work, like 5 days for the layout, 5 days for the animation, and 8 days for the lighting. And you will have eventually certain days, and based on how much every day cost, you will have average cost, and eventually you will have the number of days, and everything is calculated. Eventually you have things which you can say, this is the amount, the total amount. But this one, which is the category breakdown or the development phase, as we will see for our commercial, is something which is the things for you. So we'll say, okay, I have 10 easy shots which has just compositing and CG. There's no live shooting. I have something which has VFX with live shooting, and it has digital matte painting. This is the category. I have 5 of those. I have 7 of those, and eventually you will have something which is good. It gives you the amount of cost for these shots very fast, but you don't have to use this. It's just to speed up the process. And after that, you have the shot breakdown, and the shot breakdown, it's a little complicated. For certain jobs, you will have something which has exactly what kind of missions you will do, as well as the amount of work and man day work, like how many days I will need, what is the complexity for each one. We will go through these things for our shots, but again, it provides a lot of information. As example, the length of the shot in frames, is it external or internal, where is the location, more information about it, description, what is the methodology, what do you want to do here for it, how to solve it, is there a background footage or not, the camera movement, it does need tracking or not, what are the amount of days you will need for this mission, what is the rate for every day, and what is the total amount of work. This excluding the assets which you calculated in the first stage at the breakdown, the development phase. And here's an icon for every shot taken from the movie or the commercial, and you will eventually have something which is automatically gonna give you a number here, and you will see how that happens in some examples, other examples. So this is it, and for our example, we will go through this. We will have a similar document. We can't share this document. We will share some photos about it, which you can look and discuss things. This document is private. It's actually very expensive to do because it needs a lot of work, and but it's easy to happen or to do, and you can even do it with Excel, as we will demonstrate it here. It's just you need to know how things are happening inside this document. So let's jump to this document and discuss things. So this document is the bidding document, and in it there are some information which is like inserted in a mathematical way, which can be calculating everything automatically. So I will just fit it so you see everything, and this here as well as this down can be like this. So as you can see here, we have the shot, and we have more information about the client's comments. As example, it's tabletop liquid simulation and bubbles, all these questionnaires and some answers from the client about the thing. There's the methodology, which is internally. It's what kind of simulation we expect to do here. Is there white particles for the simulation? there are how many kind of simulation there, how we will treat or fix this thing, sometimes what are the programs we're going to use here. And in this example we did this in two main programs. We did it using Houdini, then we did it using Phonics and TY Flow with the 3ds Max. And the idea here is that we prepared this for a study. So we finished from this, as with a lot of our previous examples which we presented to the community, like courses, we do case study, and we agree that's something we agree with the client at the beginning. So during the contracting period, we sometimes we present the idea of converting the work into something educational, and some of the clients will approve that, and some of the clients will request certain things from us to change, or even sometimes a cost or something, because eventually we'll use that for educational purposes, and sometimes we sell it. So for this thing, yeah, we have information here, notes, facility, which is the division. I will talk about this. It's just one of our VFX houses, R&D actually, and it's serving in London, US, the United Arab Emirates, as well as now in Canada. So complexity, what is the category? You can just say it's A or B or whatever. And when I say this is just something we know, so as example, A is difficult, but it's not extremely difficult. And the item here, I'm talking about one shot, which is the splash shot, and this is the category. If you remember, we mentioned this before, and here if I press this thing, I will have all the other categories, like there is the hard one, easy one, CG only, CG with compositing, all these things are mentioned here. So actually all we need to do is to just say this is the category and these are the numbers, and that's it. So I will just make this bigger so you can see all the details. This is the category, and I can assign this or the numbers here from another document. If you look down here, this is the shot breakdown, and in the shot breakdown I have all the numbers with the days. But if I know exactly where these numbers coming from, I can put numbers directly here, because I think this is the amount of days for every mission. But also I can do that during the development phase. And in this one, the date is wrong here, but anyway, in this one we can just look at the categories, shot category, sorry. For the shot categories, we can look at these categories, and we can define which category is the one our shot belongs to. So as example here, hard, FX only, CGFX only, and so on. But every number here is calculated based on other numbers from here as example. So as example, if I have a shot which has CGFX comp, so I consider it easy or medium or hard. If it's easy, this is the description of the shot, and this is the total cost in general, the average total cost if there is no special needs. And if we will go here, we'll find these are the numbers which had this calculated like this. So as example, we quote daily rate of $850, or in UK is a pound, based on the market again. And for the missions, we have a lot of other missions, as example, cleanup, roto, track, layout, animation, light, FX, compositing. Light includes the rendering, but the rendering cost is not like the rendering setup. The light is including the rendering setup. So as example, I can enter the number I want here, which is the amount of days for each shot. Like I need 5 days for the layout, I need animation 1 day, light this amount of days, and eventually I will have this totally calculated and multiplied because I have certain equation. So for this document, all you need to do is to enter these numbers, what amount of days you expect this mission to take. Eventually, after you finish, each one of these categories are automatically inserted into the shot breakdown. So you go here and say, yeah, I have just CG and FX comp mid. This is the actually our shot. It's CG. There is no VFX. There is no footage or background or shooting. There is FX work, which is water simulation mostly, and there is comp, which we're gonna do. It's very simple comp, but there is comp. Of course, in another stage, there is a motion graphic and other missions, but we categorize this as a mid difficulty. It's not extremely difficult or difficult, but it's mid. It should be realistic to a certain degree because everyone understands that this is CG, it's not live shooting. And for the cost, it's almost $8,500. This number, again, it varies, and we have to take in consideration other factors, but I will mention that later. This is just for these missions. It's not for creating the battles and whatever assets we have. And these numbers are not final, again. It's just to give you an idea how to price this thing. So as example, I have no cleanup, no roto because there's no footage, no tracking, no layout. The only thing I will include is 1 day, which is shouldn't be 1 day anyway. If we will quote per day rate, we need to account for animation, which is battle animations as well as the camera animation. This is a lot for it. We can just join this number into the FX because there's a part of animation in the FX. For the lighting, we need 3 days to light this thing, have the material and everything set up. And for the FX, we need 5 days to do the simulation, excluding the simulation time for the machines, just to set up everything, make sure that the result is the one we need. And for the compositing, it's just 1 day to have everything done. That doesn't include all the things like motion graphic or other things. Again, for this multiplied by 850 each, we will have this number, which is, again, it's exactly what I said. It's the amount, every one of those multiplied by the cost here and sum of all. And eventually we'll have this calculated, and as you see here, all this is happening automatically, and I'll have this, which is the shot breakdown. It's the cost for this shot. What factors we have to take in consideration to add to this number or subtract of this number? If we will go to development breakdown, which is the assets stage, we will know that we have to create some assets for this commercial, and basically the amount of days we need for this is 3 days just to model and texture the battles. Actually, it's just, I think, 1 day work, not more than this, but I'm including this. So based on the country, of course, and everything, we will have something. And eventually it's here 2,550 just to do the modeling, texturing, and preparing the models. So if we will shade things here, we have to exclude it from there, from the shot breakdown, and vice versa. Now, what things we have to consider when pricing everything? If we will calculate the total price now, just to work the technical missions, it's 8,500 plus 2,500, which is almost 11,000, which is a lot for the shot like this. And it doesn't matter how realistic it is or not, it's a lot for the client to pay this amount of money. You have to understand that these numbers should be taken in consideration if we have other shots here. So as example, we have other shots from different cameras. So when we establish this shot, we can put our cameras in other location and just change the lighting a little, slightly, but we will have the same simulation, we'll have the same everything, and that will be a shot, another shot. So during this explosion, water explosion, or after or before, we can take more shots. So the total timing can increase, but still all the assets and the work is included with this one. It's just maybe a simulation or just rendering time and compositing time that will be calculated with this. So the other, if this will be 7 seconds and a half for this price, if we will include more 7.5 seconds, it will be included in this price, but we'll add just a little for the rendering phase. Management fees and whatever other costs, this can be happen differently. Everyone will see that he has a formula to do this. So sometimes post houses will include this and this number. So it's 850 including all the management fees and whatever inside, like the project manager, supervisors, or whatever. This is a solid number which includes the work, the company's work in every day, excluding the taxes and other related costs, financial related costs. But sometimes it's not. So 850 for the artists and for this mission. And if I will calculate this for a mission, I will add eventually something which is for the management. And if you will do that, means that you have to account this, and this number may be reduced a little, so you can add that in later stage. Eventually, the final number you will put here is a number you will provide to the client. And it's not just based on the numbers here, it's based on your calculations before you put everything in the breakdown. This way is to ease things when you have like 500, 600 shots, and to provide something very legit and easy to understand for the client. So eventually I will close this and I will have some things which I can include and send to the client. I will say this is like the development phase, and it has everything, and finally it has the number. And this as well is the shot category. And finally this one is the shot breakdown, which we can do this, and we will have some number here. And we have another document which has all the numbers calculated and gathered. So how can we price this project? To price the project, you need to understand which market are you dealing with, who's the client, did you deal with him before, is this project the final project you will do with him, is this the first project, is there any other projects, are you dealing with this shot just as one shot, if you have sequence, more than one shot, what is the best number you can give him, is it worth it to drop the number because you will do R&D phase which can consume you, but you will use it in other projects, or this project is very unique and you will do R&D and you don't expect to use the material or the research you will do for other projects. All these things should be taken in consideration. Eventually everyone will have a formula. As example, some houses will say, okay, for every second we consider that the average is between $800 and $1,200, excluding management fees and other costs. So for 7 seconds and half a TV spot, or 10 seconds, let's say about the VFX part, not the motion graphics because it's cheaper. The VFX part, if you will consider 1,000 for every second, which is average actually between America and US. Again, there are a lot of other things you can add on top of this to consider, and how short the video or long. So it would be 7,500 for 7 seconds and half. Or if I have 30 seconds for a commercial, how complex the work is, how much time I will have to do this thing. So I can say for easy seconds, we can deal with $800 per second. For medium, not hard, medium level of difficulty for some shots, we will deal with 1,400. And for complicated shots, we have to deal with 2,000. And in addition to this, eventually we'll add the management fees. So if someone will come to you and tell you, okay, I have 30 seconds, what is the amount of work included in this, which include VFX? He will tell you 24 seconds after you do the breakdown, 24 seconds, and it's mid. So I will quote like 1,400, 1,600 per second. And eventually just a simple multiplication between the two numbers, you will be like almost $40,000 to produce this kind of thing, and you add to it the management fees. This is the way you can do these things and price things. And again, we try to provide in our group some pricing and rates in different countries, but there are a lot of other resources around the place and all the internet. The best way you can do that is that you can ask other people how much it costs. So as example, the mill companies releasing their rate card, and in it you can see that daily rate can vary between $1,000 and $1,500. But eventually when they quote something and they deal with the client, you don't expect these numbers to be exactly like that. Sometimes it drops down. Most of the cases there is special needs and special treatment for every client. So this is something you share with the client and they will account for, but they know that there is a negotiation step or stage and they have to talk to you to get the best price. So again, you have to have your price to cover at least your cost. Sometimes the formula is to double the things, which I think is silly. You can't just calculate everything and double it and provide it to the client. There are a lot of other factors. I saw some people who are providing certain kind of educational material, like trying to tell people how to calculate the cost and how to set up the pricing strategy, which is really silly because you can just depend on one factor. This is the price, this is my rate, else you will be a freelancer, and the freelancer also has his way of dealing with things like, okay, I don't need to price things the same every time because I have circumstances or conditions for every job I should do. So this is eventually something you can include with your final pricing before you send it to the agency based on the complexity. I would say for small spot like this one, if I have like 3 shots in addition to the ending shot, I don't provide this breakdown. This thing is internally, we do this internally, but it will help us really specify the missions and to coordinate the missions and know exactly what departments should work and what departments should not. Sometimes is to, okay, I need the modeler to work on this project and he will stop working on this project and jump to the other project. This based on the days, and I would recommend for sure to use one of the management shot management programs or platforms such as FTRAC and Shotgun, because it will enable you to really schedule everything with your coordinators and producers. But this stage is important. You can provide this as an additional document for the clients. A lot of our clients really found it useful and they appreciate this, and they really look at the numbers and it's just convincing. $850 a day is not high for an artist to work with, and we just unified all the numbers. And this is the least amount of days. Like here we have almost 10 days to finish the work, and 10 days is not much to finish a spot like that or with more work, and that will give them an idea. It's not just speculation or just random numbers we send to everyone and expect them to come with approval. So the final thing you will send to your client is not this thing actually. The final thing is a quotation, full quotation. So I'm including one of the examples in the group again. Let me just bring it. This thing is for one of the projects we have been handling, and these are actual numbers. And in this thing, sometimes it does have production, but for this one, it does have also post-production and VFX. In it, you will mention some information about what is the client, what is the description of this, the rights, the usage. All these things are important. A lot of people I know, they don't know what does it mean, and they don't even include it in their quotations or their studies. The client will be okay, I will ignore this because no one asked me about that. But as example, if you have voiceover, you have to provide things like, okay, where is this voiceover going to be used? In Greece as example, or in Italy? What is the period, 1 year, 2 years? So these are rights you have to consider. And also you have sometimes a production, which is as here, there's a breakdown for the production, which you have numbers for every day and cost for equipments. Also, there are conditions you have to mention. I will leave this example. You can get it from the group also, but one of the groups, and these are conditions. This is when you have to pay in this time. This is how the rate in that day between euros and USD if you are dealing with different currencies. And here's a breakdown for the production crew and production location, whatever. Then after this, you will go into a visual effect and post-production breakdown, which has numbers, which has whatever you need, and you can send this to the client. For our shot, it doesn't include all the production side. It doesn't need all these conditions. It just, most of these are for production, but what you need to include is just a simple post-production, which is the finalizing and the motion graphic. And for the VFX, the missions are less than this, but exactly like the bidding, we have FX, we have animators, we have modelers, and each one or everyone will be here, and you can rate hourly or you can rate per day. For this project, it was in dollars, so everything in dollars is filled, and automatically you will have the number here. You will have some conditions and send it to the client, so he will sign it and come back to you. This looks like a long process. A lot of people, they don't have this procedure. They just simplify things and they try to, okay, send, this is the cost, this is what it cost me. That's good strategy sometimes to shortcut things, because a lot of times you will do all this work, send it to the client, and he doesn't work with you, and this costs time and effort from a producer or coordinator, and you don't want to do that for every project. If the project is important, you will do all the missions I mentioned here. If the client is important, if you want to really gain the work and get it from big agency, dream to work with, like a big brand like Coca-Cola as example, and some agencies like PPDO or GWT, all these, you have to account for things and send something really professional. And for film work, if you want to deal with big companies, in addition to the MBA, like condition for security and things related to your production pipeline, you have to deal with documents. So you send very professional breakdown. Your numbers should be consistent and very reasonable, and you need to understand the market you are coming from. So when they send something to India, they expect certain numbers. When they send something to Europe, they expect certain numbers. You have to know the average numbers in your area and to be competitive, to send something competitive. Your reel and your work is not the final decision maker for the client to, okay, this is good, I will work with this guy. No, it's this side, the business side, which is more important, much more important than the reel and the work you have. That one can help you, but this one will define and determine if you will get the job or not, if you are talking about professional work. Locally, a lot of artists and producers will work with someone like he is just local client or the provider or agency, and the work is much simpler than this. But a lot of problems usually happen between clients and providers, or agency and the providers, because there is a procedure which they didn't follow. I would say 50% you spend the time to prepare these things and do all the calculations, as well as the questionnaire and investigation, storyboarding, pre-visualization, all these things, to make sure that you have all the kind of information you need to work with. And the other 50% is to produce things that will reduce the total amount of production, that will make sure that you will receive your money without any hassle or problems, and you will be dealing professionally, expecting people to do with you and to deal with you professionally. Now, this is all I can say about the pricing and a breakdown for this project. We are planning to provide much more in-depth information about how to break a shot, how to calculate things, how to deal with things in our groups. We will announce this. Most of the material can be free, but there are some videos and courses which we have to account for and to calculate the time and effort spent from our producers to bring all these documents down, and from whoever works on this project. with the small fees. So we included this in this project because we wanted to present much more in-depth information about how to do the thing rather than just open the 3D program or 2D program, bought some assets and do the effect and send it back. I think from now on, most of the projects or courses should include that. What I mean about that, I'm mentioning the project-based courses. It should mention something about the cost or the business side of that thing, even if it will not be real projects. Sometimes it's just a case study and it's not real, not like this one, and the numbers can be just expectations, and why not just mention something about that. This is a look on one of the sites, which is a magazine, which will present more information about what we have been talking about now, including bidding, pricing, and briefs. But also we will do some case studies, and you will see something like full detailed with the download area about full detailed case study about how to price things, how to introduce and questionnaire and storyboarding brief, whatever information you need to provide with all the details, how to present the numbers with actual numbers from actual projects. This is very useful. I hope you follow up with this. We will try as much as we can to provide things for free, but again, sometimes we can't just do that. We have some other projects we can include from our main projects. We have a lot of projects running. Some of them are feature films, and some of them are just commercials, and we want to include these inside our schedule, so we will produce courses whenever we have the chance with actual case study from film and commercials. I hope you find this information, this kind of information useful, and we will proceed with the technical part of our course, how to do and produce a liquid shot all in CG. See you.